Hi there, and welcome to another edition of A Conversation with Father Orsi. I'm BC Cloutier, President of Action for Life, and this is Father Michael Orsi. How are you today?
All right.
You're looking good.
Well, feeling good.
Feeling good, too. Well, look good, feel good. Couldn't ask for any more, right?
You're right.
We're going to do, even though we're in the midst of Lent, and we've been talking about a lot of things related to Lent, I wanted to completely switch gears. I'm sure that you read recently Elon Musk, brilliant guy, very controversial. We're not going there. Owns a company called Neuralink. Mm-hmm. And they recently implanted some sort of a computer device in a human brain. The object is to start with quadriplegia and see if they can get someone, a quadriplegic, to think they would like to move their arm, and the arm will move. Now, obviously, they're a long way from doing that, but I'm just fascinated by it, Father. It's, I mean, this is science fiction stuff. But with that said, gene splicing, brain chip implants, synthetic blood, how does the church look upon these things? Because it can be, and it not only can be, it is argued that there are scientists and physicians who are, quote, playing God.
Yeah. First of all, I don't know if the church has any position on the Neuralink yet. My hunch is that the church will say, be careful. Just be careful. Quite honestly, folks, we are not going to stop science.
Right.
What we can do is perhaps have some kind of guidelines as to what we should do, what we shouldn't do, and also what is going to be good for humanity.
Let me interject a Pew study here, just for the sake of conversation. Most Americans, according to Pew, would be very or somewhat worried about the potential uses of gene editing, brain chip implants, and synthetic blood. What's interesting about the study is that Christians have roughly the same opinion as the general public, for what that's worth.
Christianity, it shouldn't be, and I hope people are clear about this, is not anti-scientist, anti-science, or anti-progressive when it comes to research and advances in technology. We have wonderful, wonderful advances in technology. You mentioned artificial blood. Well, I have no problem with artificial blood. We have a group in our country, for instance, the Jehovah's Witnesses, who said you should not take a blood transfusion because in Scripture it says you should not eat blood, right? Part of the kosher law, at least. Mm-hmm. So if artificial blood is going to help them and put their consciences at ease, great. If we can't get blood from donations, artificial blood preserves life. It is, in my opinion, it is a wonderful thing. Now, you mentioned gene splicing.
Yeah.
Again, this is a wonderful thing. People always go back to Frankenstein. We're creating monsters. Do we know what we're doing? Well, sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't, and sometimes there are experiments where we do need some guidelines, as to what is the risk of this experiment, what is the outcome that we want. Gene splicing can be a very, very marvelous thing. We can edit genes, editing of a gene, and therefore I can splice the gene, the mRNA, and I could go and snip, and I could edit out a gene that, for instance, would cause a disease. And we could do this even in utero. They could detect that a child has some kind of genetic disease, and we can go in and snip that disease, or in some way chemically alter the gene.
That's still experimental, right?
It's still experimental. However, I think we're getting closer and closer to doing something
which will
like
eliminate ALS,
right,
and a whole host of afflictions.
Now, what's wrong with that? Nada. Now, that's a great thing. If we could eliminate those kinds of disabilities and diseases, and we could treat those things, even in utero, fine, right? I think what people get a little bit squeamish is when they say, well, we can create a new form of human being. So, for instance, I'm going to edit the genes in this person, and that way this person will be super smart, have super strength. And then what do? Are you changing humanity? Are you taking the place of God? Are you taking the place of God? And that's something that we always have to be concerned about. Are we changing God's plan for us? If I say I'm going to make somebody super smart, well, there's nothing wrong with being super smart. But what about people who aren't super smart? Can we then create a race of geniuses who can afford this kind of gene editing? Can we produce people who are extremely beautiful, extremely good looking, extremely strong? We're going to create the perfect football team, all right? And we're going to breed these people by editing their genes. That might be the Frankenstein concept. And that's something that we have to be very, very careful about, because it does change humanity, and it does alter the playing field as to who's going to be doing what. We create a race of leaders, and then create a race of followers.
Well, I mean, we've seen it in certain cultures with abortion, where male babies are revered and female babies not so much. And so women abort female babies for no reason other than they want a boy.
Right.
That's a lot simpler than gene splicing, but same net effect.
Right.
That people, in that case, I think are playing God.
Right.
And I think the planet would be boring if everybody had blonde hair and blue eyes.
Yeah. Well, gray hair.
Well, we wouldn't have gray hair if they could splice our genes.
Right. Yeah.
You know, at some point, we could go down a rabbit hole with this thing, really, because I was just thinking to myself, well, wait a minute. Couldn't we get rid of all the genes that cause us to age?
Hey, sure. You know, the lifespan could go on, you know, maybe a couple of hundred years. You know,
how scary is that?
It is, and that's the Frankenstein scenario where, you know, are we tampering with things that maybe we should not tamper with? You know, you have this thing, cryogenics. Is that what they call it?
Cryogenics.
Cryogenics, where they're, you know, putting people's heads in a vat.
One of the most famous is Walt Disney.
Yeah, they're frozen, and they think they're going to bring them back. And folks, I don't think that one's going to work, but I've been wrong before. I know. I wish Walt Disney would come back, you know, better than some of the stuff they're putting out on Disney today, you know?
Poor Walt. He'd want to go back.
Right.
He wouldn't want to stay alive.
I know.
But we won't go there either.
So, yeah, it is. Science is a challenge. Folks, science is not bad. Science is not bad. It's great. Look at all of the advances in health because of science.
Transplants.
Transplants. I mean, even to get rid of diseases like polio. I remember when I was a boy in the early 50s, I could see people that were still limping. And my mother would say they had polio. Now, I came, you know, after they had the polio injection. So I wasn't going to get polio. But 5 or 10 years before that, a lot of people did get polio, including President Roosevelt.
Yeah, my brother had polio.
Did he?
And I was a baby. So I was born in 1951. And I think it was 1952. So they had to send him away to a home called the Hyde Home for Boys. Yeah. And in his case, amazingly, this was, I think, you know, God was looking after him. He was in a wheelchair. He was, so he had to be 10 years old if I was a year. We were 9 years apart. And the doctor said to him, you know, you'll never walk again. He said, oh, I will. And not only did he walk again, he played high school sports and then spent 20 years in service to our country in the U.S. Navy.
Wow.
So there was, but his left leg was much thinner than his right leg.
Right. So, you know, that's an example, you know, polio and some of the other, you know, childhood diseases that we've done a great job in eliminating. For instance, diphtheria and chicken pox and mumps and measles. And
Yeah.
so science has done a great deal of good. And also just think of, what we're able to do with people today that are in a hospital and they had a stroke, and the rehabilitation that we could give them, regenerate some of the limbs by medications. It's wonderful.
And the drugs.
The drugs, yeah.
I'm not sure I like all the drug advertising I see on TV. My doctor tells me that people come in and say, you don't have to examine me, just give me a script for whatever, because they saw it on TV. But that aside, I mean, there are a lot of miracle drugs that save lives. Statins keep people's cholesterol in line. That in the past, they would have maybe had some sort of heart disease and maybe a heart attack.
Well, let's face it. I mean, people have to realize that God has given the scientists and the doctors the ability to create and give us those things that are going to make us healthier, and that's a good thing. Health is a good thing, and science and medicine, all these things are there to help us. Of course, you can go to the extreme and say, well, I want to recreate a human being, and I want to make this person, Superman, whatever the case may be. And at that point, you have to say to yourself, well, maybe I shouldn't tamper that far. But it has to be weighed. Each case has to be weighed.
You do make a really interesting point, and that is that God has given these scientists and physicians their gifts, that they can then create whatever the process is to save lives. And I guess I'd never thought about it that way.
Yeah. For a long time, people think, wow, church is anti-science and all that because look what they did to Copernicus. All right. Galileo,
that's old news.
Yeah, it's old news. It was a different time period, and a lot of times they thought that it wasn't just with the teaching of science or astronomy, not astrology, folks, astronomy, and they said, well, it really wasn't about that. It was about heresy that they were concerned about. But it's a different time now. I think that science and philosophy and theology, the churches have to have their hand in this. And that's going to be a real challenge for Neuralink. I'm going to be at a conference.
Oh, yeah.
Talking about...
You told me in a couple of weeks.
In a couple of weeks, talking about advances in AI and in health and modern medicine. And I hope we're going to get into a conversation about Neuralink. I'd like to hear about that.
Well,
the doctors and scientists are going to be there.
Let's take a break and then we'll talk about that. We'll be back right after this. Action for Life is proud to sponsor a conversation with Father Orsi. Action for Life is an all-volunteer, pro-life, interfaith ministry that's focused on the sanctity of life from conception to natural death. In addition to sponsoring this TV program, Action for Life provides financial support and life assistance to any woman who wishes to carry her baby to term in anticipation of an adoption. Action for Life also provides financial assistance to a variety of pro-life organizations, including maternity homes, pregnancy resource centers, anti-human trafficking agencies, and sidewalk advocates, but to name a few. Please consider making a donation so that we can continue in the fight to save preborn babies. You can donate online at actionforlife.org. Thank you and God bless.
Hey gang, I know a lot of you sometimes can't watch all of our episodes of Action for Life. However, we have a solution for that. All you have to do is go to YouTube and search for Action for Life Florida. And you can catch up on all the shows, and guess what? Extra added bonus, you get to hear my weekly homily. So, YouTube and you make a fine couple.
Welcome back to A Conversation with Father Orsi. I'm BC Cloutier. We began the conversation today, Father, talking about Neuralink, which is one of Elon Musk's companies, and they have successfully, with, I would add, the approval of the FDA, implanted this device into a human brain. Now, there's a lot to, we don't know where this thing is going any more than we knew when Dr. Bakey implanted the first human heart, where that was going.
Fantastic. Wow.
But with benefit of history, we now know that Bakey was onto something, and heart transplants are, fairly.
They're not unusual.
Right. Yeah. So Neuralink is an interesting company that is based somewhat on artificial intelligence, but as with everything that Elon Musk does, it's a moonshot. He's trying to do what people say cannot be done.
I give him a lot of credit.
So do I.
I give him a lot of credit. I mean, he's taken some risks, a lot of risks. I mean, look what he's done even with his own SpaceX. It's just fantastic. He didn't have to have the federal government in there telling him how to do it and what to do and how much you could spend.
He told them how to do it.
Right.
And now they're his biggest customer.
Right. Yeah. This man is a genius. He's creative. He knows how to. He's a mover and a shaker. He's made a tremendous amount of money, and he's taken the risks. And I think that's one of the great things about capitalism, that you can take risks, and that if it works, you get a windfall profit from it and make the world better at the same time. So, we're hoping that SpaceX, really works out well for him. Someday people will be traveling to the moon for vacation. I'm sure of it. Not in my lifetime, but it'll happen, right? Same thing with this Neuralink. I mean, that to implant something in the brain and to have this thing, they call it telepathy, that
Right.
in effect, what you think can actually happen. And think of somebody who is paraplegic. I think I want to move my arm. Imagine if they did this with Stephen Hawkins.
Yeah.
Imagine that. I think I want to get up and walk. I mean, it's amazing. But there's also another part of it that really has me fascinated, but maybe frightened too. They can program it so that you can even think back in your memory as to what happened and recreate that scene in your brain. Folks, I don't know if I want to go there. I don't know if I want to go there.
I hear
but
you.
as you can see, the uses of this technology can be absolutely fantastic, and it can grow the ability of human beings to be creative, grow human intelligence, part of AI. We talked about AI.
It falls under the artificial intelligence banner, I think.
And how about people that, brain injuries and brain damage, and this thing is now working in your head. And I could think my way into doing things I couldn't do before. And folks, I don't know if I have all these concepts right in my head. It's so new, but it's happening.
I don't think anyone does, Father.
Right.
I think that the rules are being made up as we go along.
Right.
And there are two sides to AI. One is, what a fantastic invention.
Yeah.
The other side is, what if, it takes over the world?
Yeah.
And you go back to thinking about Neuralink. What if what's implanted contains faulty data?
Yeah.
It's all well and good that I'm a quadriplegic and I say, I want to raise my arm, and it raises. It's something else if I say, I'll never vote for one party or the other.
Which party? I would need a Neuralink for that.
So here's my own personal horror. I will only vote for Democrats.
I'm an independent.
I don't know where this stuff goes. I'm not that smart.
Yeah, none of us are that smart. I'd love to interview Elon Musk and see where he says it's going to go. And I'm sure that he'll just have a fantastic view of the future, of what the future holds for this Neuralink. Look, I think it's a great thing. Like everything else, you look at it and you say, well, suppose the wrong data is put into that. Again, that's why you need people who are ethics committees and ethicists.
Bioethicists.
Are going to look at this and say, well, this is what we have to do to be careful that this doesn't happen. We don't want this to happen. And there has to be oversight of these implants and people who are programming these implants. When I first, came in contact with this concept of AI, I still have a little bit of a problem trying to understand the whole thing. But you feed the data into the AI machine, the AI machine, the computer, and it comes. And what you ask it, it comes out with a program. It comes out with an essay. It comes out with a theory. It comes out with an algorithm, even how to take care of somebody who was sick. Now, let me tell you about this. There was an article that I read not too long ago, and this has to do with AI. And some hospitals wanted to engage AI in how to treat patients, and some of the nurses said, "Wait a minute, that's a machine. It's according to the information that you put in that machine, and not everybody is the same." And some of the nurses said, the machine might tell us to do one thing, but we know from experience, we know from our interaction with patients in the past, we know that that information is not correct. And this nurse said, and I'm not going to do it because the machine might say, stop the medication. The machine might say, turn the respirator off. And we know, I've seen this before. They'll be okay.
That's the rub.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, I'm reading about AI and drug development.
Mm-hmm.
Developing a drug is a trial and error kind of process, right? And with AI, they can accelerate that because AI can already tell you what's going to happen based on the formulas, which is just really fantastical. Mm-hmm. Is that a word, fantastical?
We made it up.
All right, fine.
I like it, though. I think I made it up a couple of weeks ago. You're copying my vocabulary.
It could be.
That could get you in trouble.
And then there's cloning, which has nothing to do with AI or Neuralink, but, Dolly the sheep, right? Mm-hmm. Another scary thing, that if the wrong people start cloning human beings, where does that go?
Yeah. When I looked into cloning, of course, folks, this is kind of like old news, but the cloning, you reproduce a biological copy of yourself, but if you are living in a different environment, it's not going to be the same person.
Really? So environment does have
environment
an
has
impact.
a big role on that. Although might look like you, talk like you, it doesn't necessarily mean that person is going to be like you or be you.
So more of a doppelganger.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
We'll be back right after this.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hear a lot today about society redistributing the goods of the people who work for those goods. We are called to work. Jesus was a worker himself. He was a carpenter. The apostles, they worked. They were fishermen. They never thought of themselves as being entitled to anything. As a matter of fact, St. Paul says, I'm a tent maker. I'm not going to impose on anybody. I'm going to work with my own hands. And a lot of people have forgotten that today. We are called to work, to use our natural gifts, to use our talents, to use our minds, and sometimes to use our backs to do the work that is going to provide a living for us and for our families. When we don't work, we diminish ourselves. There's no sense of satisfaction, accomplishment, no sense that we have put our time, our effort, and our sweat into providing for ourselves and for our families. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's think about what that means. It doesn't just simply mean taking a salary. It means providing for ourselves, providing for our families, and thanking Almighty God for all the good things that He has given us and asking us to co-create with Him with the goods of the earth and to use our minds to make something wonderful for ourselves, for our family, and for our country.
Welcome back to a conversation with Father Orsi. I'm BC Cloutier. Final thoughts on all of this, Father?
Yeah. We've had a very, very interesting conversation. And of course, it's on the periphery of what's going on in science. I mean, because certainly it's something that's beyond anything that I would know about in detail. As I said, this is not my bailiwick, but what is my bailiwick is this. Science is good, okay? The only time science is not good is if we abuse science. And therefore we have to use science with the idea that this is going to be good for human beings and good for the human race in general. Therefore, we have to be careful of what we do with the science that is developing. We've been talking about the Neuralink. This, folks, is a fantastic thing. I'm sure there are going to be some people who are already saying, whoa, wait a minute, this is science fiction. We can't do that, or this is scary. It better stop. No, let's see where it goes. And let's hope that Elon Musk and those scientists, he's probably going to establish some kind of a company that's going to produce these
Neuralink.
Neuralinks, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the company. And what we have to do then is to say to ourselves, who's overseeing? Who is overseeing this? And when we talk about oversight, we have to bring in all the different disciplines. I want to, as a theologian, I want to have a theologian in there. Sure. I've sat on committees. I was at the University of Penn, and I sat on a committee, which it was an oversight into bioethics. This is part of bioethics. And we gave a theological opinion. We also were able to have people on there that gave us a sociological opinion, a psychological opinion. We had scientists on that could tell us the pros and the cons. We have to get all of our heads together in order to come up with good decisions as to how we can use technology. We can't let technology get too far ahead of us because then it'll be too late. Right. So we have to try to meet it. And so I'm going to urge the churches and church leadership to try to get a place at the table. You got to have a place at the table if you are going to be meaningful to this world. Don't just say, you can't do that, you can't do that. Well, no matter what you say, if it can be done, it will be done. And you want to be able to say, look, I gave it my best shot to make this thing work for the good. And I just didn't, put my head in the sand and say, you can't do it. No, as I said, whether we say we can or we can't, somebody's going to do it. And we want to be able to at least guide the science as to what it should be regarding human life. So, folks, this is it really is a very, very exciting time. If you know Elon Musk, tell him that I want to place the table. I'd like to discuss this with him. And if he has an extra implant, neural implant, Neuralink, he'll put it in my head. and maybe I'll know more about this technique next time we have a conversation. So God bless you, folks.
Thank you, Father, and thank you for watching. Join us again next week for a conversation with Father Orsi. I'm BC Cloutier. Until next week, have a good week and God bless.